My daughter raised her wine glass at Thanksgiving and thanked her in-laws for giving us the life mom never could. 23 people laughed politely. I was the only one at that table who knew I had paid their mortgage that morning. I had also paid their daughter's preschool tuition, their health insurance, and the balance on the SUV parked outside. My son-in-law's mother smiled at me and said, "Some people build legacies, Nora. Some people just help around the edges." Then my daughter looked straight at me and added, "Mom was always more comfortable taking care of other people's success." That was the moment something inside me went quiet. I did not scream. I did not throw my plate. I simply placed my napkin beside the meal I had helped finance and said, "Then starting January 1st, the people with the legacy can pay for it." My name is Nora Bennett. I am 62 years old, and until that Thanksgiving night, my only child believed my love came with automatic renewal. I live outside Milwaukee, Wisconsin, in a one-bedroom apartment above a pharmacy where the radiator clanks whenever the temperature drops below freezing. For 34 years, I worked as a pediatric oncology nurse at St. Anne's Medical Center, holding frightened children still, explaining terrifying things in words they could understand, and working holidays because cancer never checked the calendar. My husband, David, taught shop at a public high school. He was a broad-shouldered, patient man who could repair almost anything and believed every problem improved after coffee. We were not wealthy, but we owned a brick ranch in Wauwatosa, paid our bills on time, and spent 22 summers slowly fixing a small cabin near Sturgeon Bay. David built the porch himself. I painted the kitchen cabinets blue. Our daughter, Claire, learned to swim off the end of that dock, and every August we marked her height on the pantry door. When David died of a heart attack at 58, I lost the person who made ordinary life feel like enough. 4 years later, I sold the house because every room carried his footsteps. I kept the cabin because I could not bear to lose both places at once. Then Claire called me crying. She and her husband, Grant Mercer, had found what she called their forever home in Brookfield. It had 4 bedrooms, a white kitchen, a finished basement, and an elementary school everyone whispered about as if admission guaranteed a child's entire future. They were short on the down payment. Grant's salary at his father's wealth management office looked impressive on paper, but they had student loans, 2 cars, and a lifestyle that had expanded faster than his paycheck. Claire had stopped working after my granddaughter Sophie was born. "Just for a year," she said. "Maybe 2. I don't want strangers raising her." I understood that fear. I also understood what housing cost near that school district. I gave them $68,000 from the sale of my house. Claire cried again, this time from relief. She wrapped her arms around me and whispered, "You're saving our family." I remember those words because for the next 5 years, she used some version of them every time the family needed saving. The first monthly payment was supposed to be temporary. Grant's annual bonus had been delayed, and the mortgage was due. Then Sophie needed a preschool deposit. Then their insurance premium increased. Then Claire's SUV required repairs. But Grant said repairing it made no sense, so they leased a new one. Each problem arrived alone, dressed as an emergency. Together, they became $4,300 a month. I paid the mortgage directly because Claire said it reduced her anxiety. I paid the preschool online because Grant was always traveling. I covered the insurance and sent grocery money whenever Claire texted a photo of an almost empty refrigerator. "Just until spring," she would say. Spring became summer. Summer became another year, and gratitude slowly turned into routine. I retired earlier than planned, after an injury to my shoulder made lifting patients unsafe. My pension covered my apartment and basic bills, but the rest came from David's life insurance, our savings, and eventually the cabin. I sold it to a couple from Chicago who planned to replace the porch and turn the pantry into a wet bar. At the closing, I handed over the keys and cried in my car for 20 minutes. I did not tell Claire. She had just posted a picture of Sophie in a monogrammed Easter dress with the caption, "So grateful for the life we've built." I told myself the cabin was wood and nails. Sophie was family. David would have understood. That sentence became the permission slip I wrote myself whenever the numbers frightened me. The Mercers photographed every gathering before anyone was allowed to eat. Grant's father, Martin, ran a financial planning firm and spoke about money as if he had invented it. Diane owned a home decor boutique that sold candles for the price of my weekly groceries. Their older son, Tyler, was the family star. Martin had paid for his business degree, helped open his fitness franchise, and bought him a lakefront condo as a wedding gift. Claire admired them with an intensity that changed her. She corrected my pronunciation of wine names, called only while driving, and ended almost every conversation with a request. Her social media showed brunches, spa weekends, and captions about how Diane taught her to choose abundance. I appeared in almost none of the pictures. At Sophie's 5th birthday, I worked 6 hours and appeared half hidden behind a rented princess in one of 27 photos. "You hate pictures," Claire said. I did not hate pictures. I hated asking to be seen. Still, I kept paying. I loved Sophie. She had David's serious brown eyes and his habit of humming when she concentrated. Every Tuesday, I picked her up from preschool and took her to the library. We built blanket forts in my apartment and ate grilled cheese cut into stars. With me, she did not care whether the cheese was imported or whether the apartment had a mudroom. She cared that I knew all the voices in her favorite book. Claire knew that access to Sophie was the softest place in me, although I did not understand how deliberately she used it until later. If I hesitated over an expense, she would say, "I guess we'll have to reconsider preschool. Sophie will be heartbroken." If I asked why Martin and Diane could not help, Claire's voice hardened. "They help us in ways you don't understand. Besides, they respect people who handle their own responsibilities." The contradiction should have struck me. Instead, I worked harder to prove I was not jealous. The Thanksgiving dinner happened at Martin and Diane's house. Diane had asked me to bring 2 pies, sweet potatoes, and rolls for 24 people. Claire asked if I could also pay for the floral centerpieces because Diane had already done so much. The arrangements cost $640. I stared at the invoice on my phone, then paid it. When I arrived, carrying the pies, the kitchen was crowded with caterers. Diane looked at my foil-covered dishes and said, "Oh, Nora, I wish Claire had told you. We decided to have everything coordinated." My sweet potatoes stayed in the car. The pies were moved to a laundry room counter because the dessert table had been styled by the boutique. Sophie ran toward me, but Claire intercepted her to fix a velvet bow before the family pictures. I stood near the staircase while the photographer arranged Martin and Diane in the center, their sons and daughters-in-law beside them, and the grandchildren in front. "Nora, would you mind taking a few on Claire's phone?" Diane asked. I took 12 photographs of my daughter's family while holding my coat over one arm. No one invited me into the frame. At dinner, I was seated near the end, between Grant's divorced uncle and a folding chair reserved for Tyler's business partner. The conversation moved from ski vacations to kitchen renovations to Tyler's newest franchise. Martin announced that he was helping Tyler purchase a second location. Everyone applauded. Grant joked that his brother had inherited the family hunger. Diane lifted her glass and said, "That is what I love about this family. Everyone understands that comfort is earned. We don't wait for someone else to create our future." Claire's eyes flicked toward me. I felt it, even before she spoke. She had always been able to make cruelty sound like agreement. "Grant's parents taught us so much about building a real life," she said. "I love Mom, obviously, but she never thought that way. She was always content just working her shifts and helping around the edges." Grant laughed. "Nora's a caretaker. Building isn't really her thing." I looked across the table at my daughter. She knew about the down payment. She knew about the mortgage, the preschool, the insurance, the groceries, the flowers sitting 3 feet behind Diane's chair. She knew I had sold the cabin because I had finally told her 2 months earlier when she asked me for $12,000 to replace their patio. Her only response had been, "I thought you were going to sell it eventually anyway." Now she lifted her wine glass and thanked Martin and Diane for giving us the life Mom never could. The polite laughter came. Diane delivered her line about legacies. Claire delivered hers about other people's success. And I finally heard the truth beneath 5 years of excuses. They did not see my sacrifices as love. They saw them as my assigned role. I put down my napkin and told them the payments would stop on January 1st. Claire blinked, as if I had changed languages. Grant's fork froze over his plate. Martin stared at me with the irritated concentration of a man watching a number fall on a screen. Diane gave a small laugh. "Surely this isn't the place for a financial discussion." "You made it the place," I said. "I'm only correcting the record." Claire leaned toward me and whispered, "Mom, don't do this." "I'm not doing anything to you," I said. "I'm stopping what I've been doing to myself." Then I stood, kissed Sophie's hair, collected my coat, and left. Snow had started while we were eating. The flakes looked silver beneath the driveway lights. My sweet potatoes were cold in the back seat, and for some reason that nearly broke me. Not the insult, not the money. Those untouched sweet potatoes, made from David's recipe, sitting in a disposable pan because there had been no room for anything I brought to the table. Claire called before I reached the freeway. I let it ring. She called 6 more times, then sent a text. "You humiliated me in front of everyone." 10 minutes later, Grant is furious. Then, "You cannot make a decision like this without discussing how it affects Sophie." That last message was designed with precision. I pulled into a gas station and cried until the windows fogged. Then I typed, "The payments end January 1st. This is not a discussion." Her reply arrived immediately. "Fine. Then don't expect Tuesday pickups to continue like nothing happened." I read that sentence 3 times. My daughter had turned my granddaughter into an invoice before I was even home. The next morning, I opened the metal file box I kept in my closet. For years, I had avoided adding everything because the total felt like an accusation against my own judgment. That day, I made coffee, sat at my small kitchen table, and counted the down payment. 58 mortgage payments, preschool tuition, insurance premiums, car repairs, then the lease, the emergency furnace, the family vacation, Claire said Sophie would remember forever, the catered baptism, the $600 flowers, grocery transfers, a new water heater, Grant's golf club dues, disguised once as a professional networking expense, $317,840. The number did not include the wedding, the baby shower, the furniture I bought when Sophie was born, or the thousands of small purchases I no longer remembered. I had spent more than $300,000 to remain useful to people who would not make room for me in a photograph. At noon, Grant called. He did not ask whether I was all right. He said January was too soon. He said reorganizing their finances would take 6 months. He reminded me that the house had costs I could not possibly understand. When I told him I understood the costs because I had been paying them, his voice sharpened. "No one forced you, Nora." There it was, the sentence people use when they want to keep the gift but reject the giver. "You're right," I said. "No one forced me. That is why I'm free to stop." He accused me of punishing Claire for a joke. I told him jokes are supposed to reveal humor, not contempt. Then he said something I will never forget. "This is why Claire never wanted you involved in our finances. You make help feel like ownership." I looked around my apartment at the secondhand bookcase, the patched armchair, the kitchen floor I had scrubbed myself. "If I wanted ownership," I said, "I would not be living above a pharmacy while you sleep in a house I paid to keep." He hung up. For 2 weeks, messages came from every direction. Diane demanded maturity. Martin warned about Sophie's stability. Claire sent a photograph of Sophie in the scarf I had knitted, then wrote, "I hope proving your point is worth losing her." I answered once, "I love Sophie. I will never use money to buy access to her, and I will never accept access being sold to me." Claire removed me from the family photo app. I learned on Facebook that Sophie had performed in a school concert. Claire's caption read, "So thankful for the family who always shows up." Diane and Martin sat in the front row. I had not known it existed. I clicked backward through years of posts and finally saw the story she had been telling. The house was described as a dream made possible by the Mercer family. The trip I paid for was a gift from the best grandparents. The preschool photos thanked Diane for investing in Sophie's future. When I sold the cabin, Claire posted a picture from her renovated patio and wrote, "Generational success means each family leaves the next one more than memories." Hundreds of people had watched my daughter hand my sacrifices to someone richer because their name looked better beneath the picture. I took screenshots not to expose her, but because I needed proof for the part of me still trying to excuse her. My friend Evelyn came over that evening with chicken soup and found me sitting on the floor beside the file box. Evelyn had worked beside me at Sreet, Ann's, for 19 years. She knew grief, stubbornness, and the particular stupidity of women who confuse self-erasure with love. She looked at the total on my legal pad and said, "Nora, if one of our patients told you this story, what would you call it?" "Complicated," I said. "Try again. Manipulation." And if she said she had to continue because the person manipulating her was her daughter, I could not answer. Evelyn sat beside me. "Being her mother explains why you stayed," she said. "It does not require you to stay longer." I wish I could say those words made me instantly strong. They did not. Boundaries sound clean when people describe them afterward. Living inside one is messy. I woke at 3 in the morning imagining Sophie believing I had abandoned her. I drafted messages to Claire and deleted them. I nearly offered 3 more months of mortgage payments because January felt cruel. Then the bank sent an alert for an automatic transfer I had forgotten. $900 to cover Claire's holiday shopping card. I canceled it. 5 minutes later, Claire called. "What did you do?" she demanded. "Not hello. Not mom. What did you do?" I told her. She said gifts had already been ordered. She said returning them would humiliate her. She said Diane had invited the extended family for Christmas, and everyone expected Claire's home to look a certain way. "Then let it look like what you can afford," I said. She went silent. "You sound bitter," she finally said. "Maybe," I replied. "But bitterness is not the reason I'm stopping. Clarity is." She told me I had always been jealous of Diane. That hurt because it borrowed my own secret fear. Diane was polished where I was practical. She knew designers and charity board members. She wore cream-colored clothing without spilling anything. But envy was not why I felt small around her. I felt small because my daughter made herself smaller toward me whenever Diane entered the room. "I was never jealous of her money," I said. "I was jealous that you protected her feelings while spending mine." Claire hung up. Christmas passed without an invitation. I served dinner at a community shelter and told everyone I preferred it that way. That was only partly true. At 7:14, Grant sent a picture of Sophie holding the dollhouse I had bought months earlier. The message said only, "She loves it." I stared until grief became physical, then put the phone away and carried another tray into the dining room. January 1st arrived. No payment left my account. Nothing exploded. Snow fell. The pharmacy opened at 9. I made oatmeal and listened to the pipes knock. At 10, Claire sent, "I hope you're proud of yourself." I did not answer. By February, their trouble was visible. Claire sold designer handbags. Grant left Martin's office after learning the promised partnership had never been real and took a lower-paid insurance job. They canceled a trip and replaced the SUV with an old minivan. None of this pleased me. Watching Claire's life shrink felt like watching a house burn after refusing to carry water alone. I was relieved to be outside the flames, but I still knew who was inside. In March, Claire came to my apartment without calling. She wore leggings, an expensive coat, and the exhausted expression of someone who had spent weeks fighting reality as if it were a customer service error. I opened the door but did not invite her in. "Are you seriously going to make me stand in the hallway?" she asked. "That depends on why you're here." She looked past me at the apartment, and I saw the old judgment return. "We need to talk privately." I stepped aside. She sat at my table, placed her handbag beside her, and began to cry. My body responded before my mind did. I almost reached for her. Then she pulled a folded paper from her bag. It was a list of overdue bills. "We're going to lose the house," she said. "Grant's new job won't cover everything. Dad," she sometimes called Martin Dad now, "says helping would prevent us from learning responsibility." The irony was so complete, I almost laughed. But Claire looked truly frightened. She asked for $30,000 to catch up and give them time to sell without panic. She promised it would be the last request. I had heard that promise in smaller forms for 5 years. "No," I said. Her crying stopped so quickly it frightened me. "You didn't even think about it." "I have thought about it every day since Thanksgiving." "You have the money." "Some money, yes." "Then how can you watch your granddaughter lose her home?" "Sophie will still have a home. It may be smaller. It may not be in the neighborhood you chose. Children survive smaller houses. What they do not survive without damage is learning that love means one person must disappear so everyone else can stay comfortable." Claire pushed back from the table. "Do not turn this into one of your hospital speeches." "This is not a speech. It is the answer." Her face changed. The frightened daughter vanished, and the woman from Thanksgiving returned. "You want us to fail," she said. "You want proof that I needed you. You did need me. You just could not respect me and need me at the same time." She stood. "Diane was right about you. You help so people will owe you." I went to the closet, brought out the metal file box, and set the ledger on the table. $317,840, I said. "Tell me what you believe you still owe me." She stared at the number. For 1 second, shame passed over her face. Then she said, "I never asked you to sell the cabin." It was the cruelest thing she could have said because it was technically true. She had asked for money knowing I was running out. She had accepted it after I told her where it came from. But she had never spoken the exact sentence, "Sell the place where Dad taught me to swim." People like Claire often hide inside the distance between what they request and what they know it will cost. "No," I said. "You only made sure I understood what would happen to Sophie if I stopped." She grabbed her bag. At the door, she turned and said, "If you let us lose that house, you will not see Sophie again. I mean it." My heart began beating so hard I could hear it. I wanted to bargain. I wanted to offer 10,000, then 5. I wanted to fall to my knees and beg my own child not to erase me. Instead, I held the door open. "Then when Sophie is old enough to ask why," I said, "you will have to decide whether to tell her the truth." Claire left. I closed the door, locked it, and slid down against it until I was sitting on the floor. Strength does not always feel powerful. Sometimes it feels like sobbing into your hands while refusing to chase the person who hurt you. They sold the house in June. The online listing was beautiful. The white kitchen gleamed. The patio I helped finance was described as perfect for making family memories. I wondered whether real estate photographers knew how many lies their wide-angle lenses captured. Claire and Grant moved to a townhouse 40 minutes away. Sophie changed schools. Grant blamed Claire for the spending. Claire blamed Grant for trusting his father. Diane blamed both of them for embarrassing the family. Martin refused to discuss money at all. Their marriage did not collapse in one dramatic scene. It frayed through accusations, passwords, separate dinners, and the discovery that neither of them knew how to live without someone else absorbing the consequences. In August, Grant called and apologized. He admitted knowing I paid many bills and said he chose anger after learning about the cabin because gratitude would have forced him to see what he had become. He asked whether I wanted secret updates about Sophie. Every part of me said yes, but I refused to pull a child into an adult conflict. I told him to keep my number for emergencies and tell Sophie once that I loved her. Don't make her carry messages. Before hanging up, Grant said I was the only person who gave without demanding a performance. "I performed too," I said. "I played the mother who needed nothing." In September, I moved to a small duplex with a patch of yard. I bought a deep green sofa because I liked it, replaced my worn coat, scheduled postponed dental work, and took a short trip with Evelyn. I also volunteered with parents of children receiving cancer treatment. I made coffee and translated medical language into human language. The Mercers had treated care as a consolation prize for people who could not build wealth. I remembered that care was not endless surrender. It was attention offered freely, with truth inside it. 6 months later, Claire sent 23 pages from a family therapist worksheet. The first began, "I am sorry you felt unappreciated." She explained her stress, fear, and the pressure of motherhood, then said we had both made mistakes. "Reconciliation," she wrote, "required me to admit that stopping the payments had destabilized Sophie. Her pain was real. But the letter never said, 'I used your fear of losing Sophie to control you,' or 'I let another family take credit for your sacrifice.' She wanted healing without an accurate description of the wound. I replied that I loved her, but suffering did not erase her choices, and I would not accept shared blame for her exploitation of me. I ended with, 'I am no longer available for contact. If there is a genuine emergency involving Sophie, Grant has my number. Do not send requests, messages through relatives, or invitations that require me to deny what happened.' I mailed it the next morning. Then I blocked her number. My sister said mothers should always leave a door unlocked. I asked if she would advise a daughter to accept the same threats and exploitation from her mother. She admitted she would not. Motherhood made my love permanent. It did not make my consent permanent. The following Thanksgiving, I hosted dinner in the duplex. Evelyn came, along with 2 nurses from the hospital, my widowed neighbor, Mr. Alvarez, and a young mother from the support center whose family lived in Arizona. We used mismatched plates. The turkey finished 40 minutes late. Someone spilled cranberry sauce on the rug. No one arranged us by status for a photograph. Before we ate, Mr. Alvarez asked everyone to name something they had stopped carrying that year. Evelyn said guilt. The young mother said, pretending to be brave. When it was my turn, I looked around the table and said, "The belief that being needed is the same as being loved." No one laughed. After dinner, Grant sent one photograph. Sophie, now 7, was sitting at a kitchen table, painting a wooden birdhouse. My old nursing school sweatshirt hung loosely around her shoulders. Under the picture, he wrote, "She asked for something that smelled like you. Claire and I are separated. I am not asking you to respond. I thought you deserved to know," she remembers. "I could almost smell library books, grilled cheese, and Sophie's strawberry shampoo." I cried, but I did not call. Love can be real and still be unsafe to act on. Missing someone is not proof that returning is wise. In January, I received a small package with no return address. Inside was a wooden birdhouse painted blue, the exact shade of the cabinets at the old cabin. On the bottom, in a child's handwriting, were the words, "Grandma Nora's house." There was no note. I do not know whether Grant sent it with Claire's permission, without it, or after Sophie insisted. I placed it on the shelf beside David's photograph. I did not use it as an excuse to break the boundary. A boundary that survives only until someone sends the perfect symbol is not a boundary. It is a pause. I hope that one day Sophie will be old enough to contact me freely. If she does, I will welcome her without making her choose sides, and I will tell her the truth in words appropriate for her age. But I will not buy that future. I will not send money through Grant, negotiate through birthday gifts, or prove my love by becoming useful again. Claire knew where I lived when she sent her letter. She knew what accountability required. She chose a softer version that protected her self-image, and I finally understood that accepting it would teach her the same lesson my money had taught for years, that I would absorb the cost of whatever she refused to face. Last spring, I drove to Sturgeon Bay. The cabin had a new porch railing, and the blue cabinets were gone. At the public beach, a father taught his little girl to skip stones and celebrated every failed throw. I remembered David doing that with Claire, then remembered Claire at Thanksgiving, telling people I had never built anything. The memory still hurt, but it no longer defined the view. I had built a life of skilled work, a marriage with tenderness in it, and a home where my daughter once felt safe. I had also built the habits that allowed her to use me: silence, overgiving, and the conviction that my needs were dangerous. Taking responsibility for that did not mean accepting blame for her choices. It meant refusing to repeat mine. I picked up a flat stone and sent it across the surface. It skipped twice. David would have teased me about my form. I laughed out loud, alone on the shore. When I returned home, I made one final change. For years, the emergency contact card in my wallet listed Claire. I replaced it with Evelyn's name. That tiny act hurt more than canceling the mortgage payment. It also felt honest. Family is not the person most entitled to your sacrifice. Family is the person who can be trusted with your vulnerability. Today, my life is quieter than the one Claire displayed online, but it is mine. My pension stays in my account. My refrigerator is full. My green sofa has a coffee stain from a movie night with friends. The birdhouse sits beneath David's photograph, not as a promise that everything will be repaired, but as proof that love can remain even when contact ends. I do not hate my daughter. Hatred would keep me facing her. I simply stopped abandoning myself to stay connected to her. People often ask whether cutting her off made me feel free. The honest answer is that freedom and heartbreak arrive together. Some mornings I still reach for the phone when I see something Sophie would love. Some holidays, I still imagine an apology that begins without excuses. Then I remember the cold sweet potatoes in my back seat, the family photograph I was asked to take but not join, and my daughter's first response when I canceled her shopping money. "What did you do?" I know exactly what I did. I stopped paying people to misunderstand my worth. I stopped calling exploitation loyalty. I stopped teaching my daughter that motherhood was a resource she could drain without consequence. And I learned that walking away is not always revenge. Sometimes it is the first truthful act in a relationship built on lies. So tell me honestly, was I right to cut off my only daughter after she used my love as a line of credit and my granddaughter as leverage? Or should a parent keep the door open, no matter how many times family walks through it carrying a bill? Walks through it carrying a bill. Walks through it carrying a bill. Walks through it carrying a bill.